What's up guys, Asian here again with another kind of Murkmire video here, and today we're going to be discussing something that's been on a lot of minds lately, and something that you guys might have seen Liofa post on the official forums, and I think he might have posted it on, I'm not sure if he posted it on the tank class rep Discord. He posted it on Toxic Raiding Environment quite a while back. And this is the idea of running dual wield on the back bar of your tank now. So this video will kind of discuss, basically review Liofa's reasoning behind it, and my own personal thoughts as to why I think it might be a good idea, but I'm not 100% sold on it yet, and I do think it's going to be kind of situationally based, whether you're going to be doing something like dual wield or sword and board, or you're going to have the ice staff on your back bar. So first of all, let's go ahead and talk about what exactly, why would you run dual wield on your back bar? What changed between Wolf Hunter and Murkmire that makes the dual wields a potential good choice for a backbar thing for a tank. So if we go ahead, I don't have the patch notes readily available for me, but they did basically change how enchants work with weapon abilities. So right now on Wolf Hunter, things like Blockade and Endless Hail will not proc buffing enchants like Hardening or weapon damage enchants. In Murkmire, they do. So that's one thing that you kind of want to take into consideration. The second thing is Blood Craze right now, or the other morph, Rending Slashes, that only procs your main hand enchant and not your offhand enchant. So now in Murkmire, it actually procs both backbar enchants now. So basically what this means is whatever enchant you have on your dual wield on your back bar, so in this instance I have Crusher and Absorb Stamina, you can basically maintain 100% uptime on both of these enchants as long as you are maintaining Blood Craze or Rending Slashes when you're on your back bar. So that is kind of the basis and the foundation behind why Liofa believes that the dual wield backbar is going to be a particularly strong choice for tanks in a lot of scenarios, because you're able to maintain that basically double enchants as long as you're keeping up Rending Slashes or Blood Craze here. I will probably run Blood Craze just for the additional little bit of heal there, but you could run Rending Slashes too if you'd like. I just feel like Blood Craze is a better fit for a tank. And I do agree with Liofa in the fact that maintaining these two enchants, whatever enchant you put on here, whether that's Crusher Weakening or Absorb Stamina and Hardening or Crusher Hardening, keeping those enchants up 100% of the time is very powerful as a tank. So that basically means you don't have to worry about maintaining Crusher at all, because as long as you maintain Rending Slashes or Blood Craze on your back bar, and if you're running something like Absorb Stamina, now you have a method of restoring stamina while you're blocking on your front bar now, because it's going to proc while you're on your front bar, and you're just going to get some stamina back. So it's particularly nice to have that there. It's going to help out a lot of classes that might not have very good stamina sustain. So for example, you have your Sorks and your Nightblade. Those two classes are going to see a pretty big benefit from being able to basically backbar an Absorb Stamina enchant and have that proc pretty much on cooldown. So one question, that the counter argument, I should say, is, well, you can kind of achieve the same thing with a staff, can't you? And to an extent, yes, you can. So if you use something like Blockade on an ice staff or something, yes, you'll be able to maintain the enchant on your ice staff. But the downside is you only get one enchant with that staff, versus dual wield where you get the two enchants. So if you basically just do the math, you have 3 weapons with 3 enchants versus 2 weapons with 2 enchants. Obviously 3 is greater than 2, so why not just do dual wield? Of course, the downside of running a dual wield on your back bar is you do lose out on things like Blockade and Crushing Shock. So Crushing Shock is for that range interrupt, and then Elemental Blockade, if you're running a Lightning Staff back bar, helps maintain off-balance uptime if you guys need that to help maintaining off-balance uptime. So that's one of the big disadvantages of running dual wield on your back bar. Another disadvantage is, and this really depends whether you take the passive or not, is you do lose out on some block reduction if you're running a Frost Staff. So if you have Ancient Knowledge, and you have a destruction staff ability slotted, then while you're on your ice staff bar, it does reduce the amount of damage you take by 20% while you're blocking. So that just adds an additional damage mitigation. So that's nice to have. You don't get this with a lightning staff. You don't get this with dual wield. Dual wield does not have any sort of damage mitigation here with the passives. It's all pretty much DPS focused here. So that's kind of one of the downsides of running dual wield backbar. Now, another upside of running dual wield backbar is you do get the advantage of being able to run Deadly Cloak, which basically reduces the damage you take from AoE attacks by 25%. So that's just some additional damage mitigation as well. On top of that, plus Deadly Cloak, I believe, can also proc both enchants now, so that just helps maintain your enchant uptime. So you don't really have any other source of Major Evasion as a tank if you have a sword and board or a destruction staff as your backbar. So dual wield does seem to be pretty strong, and I do agree with Liofa that in a lot of fights, in a lot of scenarios, running dual wield on your backbar as a tank, it just makes a lot of sense. Assuming, of course, that you have the weapons available. So if you're running something like Alkosh, then obviously you're going to need 3 Alkosh weapons in order to run dual wield. Now I have double axes here, but you can really go with whatever you want here, just because you're a tank, so it doesn't really matter what weapon you choose. Axes are nice for that additional bleed. Daggers give you more crit chance. Swords increase the damage done. So it's kind of up to you. Maces reduce physical resistance. So just really, because the tank doesn't really matter too much in terms of DPS, you might as well just take whatever 2 weapons you get first and infuse, whichever set you're running on your backbar there. Now, the other thing that I do want to mention here is that you can also use your other Maelstrom abilities or your Blackrose abilities. So let's pull out the Blackrose set real quick. So you can have the Alkosh on your front bar here, and then you can run dual wield Blackrose on your back bar instead of just your normal Alkosh. So when you have this Blackrose, I have the perfected version here. Blade Cloak grants you major protection for 3 seconds, reducing the damage taken by 30%. And you get some additional stamina regen, I guess. So the major protection for 3 seconds, that's not really that big, but it's just something nice to have, so you can decide to go with something like this Blackrose perfected set on your back bar as well. You don't really have that same sort of utility with the Destro staffs. The only exception to the Destro staffs would probably be, I would say maybe Asylum, but or maybe Maelstrom, but that's not that big of a deal because, again, your job as a tank is not DPS, and Maelstrom is very focused in on that DPS aspect of things. So overall, I do agree with Liofa's assessment that dual wield is a very strong option for tanks going into Murkmire. And now Zos did mention that they are going to re-examine how dual wield enchants work in order to kind of bring them more in line with two-handed builds, so staves and two-handed like swords and things like that, just because one of the main advantages of dual wield is the fact that you get 2 enchants versus the 1 if you have a two-handed weapon. So this might not last, but we're going to enjoy it while we can. Basically, they said that they're going to look into reworking that enchant in the next DLC/chapter, so we have at least 2 or 3 months of enjoying the dual wield backbar as a tank until they announce the new DLC and have a release date there. So basically, dual wield, I would highly recommend trying this out as a tank. A lot like with the staff backbar, though, this is something that I would only recommend for more advanced tanks in fights where you know the fight mechanics, where are comfortable with your survivability. If you're just starting to learn how to tank, I would not recommend this at all. I would still recommend sticking with double sword and board if you're just learning how to tank. But if you're one of those experienced tanks, then by all means do a dual wield backbar here. So Liofa did mention fights where this would not be great, and I also mentioned it here as well. And those 2 instances where you might not want to have dual wield on the back bar is instances where you needed ranged interrupt, in which case you're going to want a Destro staff for the crushing shock. So a good example of this would be Asylum when you're doing have Lothus on the field for like hard mode or +1 with Lothus. So you want that ranged interrupt there. The other instance is if you want to help out with off-balance uptime, then you'll be running a lightning staff on your back bar. Those are the really 2 instances where you wouldn't really want to run dual wield on your back bar. So overall, I do endorse Liofa's recommendation, but only if you're an advanced tank. If you're a beginner tank, then I would still recommend sticking with double sword and board until you get more comfortable with tanking mechanics, with fight mechanics, and your own personal survivability. So that is it for this video. Let me know down in the comments below what you guys think of tanks running dual wield on the backbar in Murkmire. I'd like to know what you guys think about Liofa's assessment. Hope you guys found this video informative, and I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.